Hey movie lovers, John here from Fast Films. Today, we're going to take a 2017 Japanese action film called Tokyo Ghoul. The movie begins with the introduction of ghouls, human-like entities that inhabit the earth and feed on human flesh. Next, a high school student called Kaneki is seen sitting in a cafe with his friend Hyde. Hyde shows Kaneki news on his cell phone about newly found ghouls in the area. He tells him that it's said that ghouls look just like humans. What if, he says, someone around them is a ghoul? Kaneki looks at the people around and remarks that none of them can be a ghoul. Just then, Rise, Kaneki's crush, walks into the cafe. Kaneki gets extremely nervous. Hyde tells him to ask Rise out, but Kaneki refuses. While trying to force Kaneki, Hyde accidentally throws his book on the floor, which lands at Rise's feet. She picks it up and hands it to Kaneki, telling him she likes the same writer. She then smiles at him and leaves. Next, Kaneki is shown on a date with Rise. Kaneki notices that Rise has not touched her food and asks her why. Rise tells him that she's already full. They both then go for a walk. After walking for a while, Rise embraces Kaneki, who nervously, yet excitedly, hugs her back. Then, Rise suddenly bites into Kaneki's shoulder and tears off his flesh. Kaneki's eyes widen and he tries to get away from her. Rise appears in her true form in front of him. Her eyes change color and her predatory organs, the Kagoon, emerge from her back. She tears through Kaneki's stomach with her Kagoon and brings him close. She then starts licking his blood from his face. Just then, a pile of logs falls over her from the top and kills her instantly. Kaneki later wakes up in a hospital. Through a television broadcast, he learns that his doctor replaced his ruptured organs with Rise's to save his life. The CCG, Commission of Counter Ghoul, is an agency made to exterminate ghouls. Two ghoul investigators from the agency, called Suzuya and Amon, are seen near a ghoul's corpse. Suzuya instructs Amon to remove the Kagoon of the ghoul so that they can be made into a Quinke, which is a weapon used by these investigators against ghouls. Suzuya finds a ring on the corpse's finger and takes it with him. They both are then seen in an agency meeting, where Amon explains that the ghoul they just killed, Fueguchi, had a ring in his finger which was made in pairs. He thus concludes that Fueguchi has a wife whom they need to hunt down immediately. The clue which may lead them to her, he says, is a fiber of cloth that was found on Fueguchi's shirt. When Kaneki goes to school the next day, Hyde treats him to a meal. Kaneki stares at the food in nervousness as Hyde starts gobbling it up. Hyde notices that Kaneki hasn't started and tells him to eat. Kaneki hesitantly takes a bite, but as soon as he downs it, he throws it up. A man in a TV show explains that ghouls cannot eat human food as it is acrid to them. They might down a few bites amidst other humans, but it makes them want to vomit. Kaneki is then seen sitting in front of his refrigerator with numerous food items scattered around him on the floor. He tries all the food in an attempt to find something that appeals to his appetite, but as soon as he takes a bite, he immediately throws it up. After this, Kaneki goes out for a walk. Every time he sees skin, his mind goes crazy with hunger. The smell of something delicious attracts him to a dark alley. He goes there to find a ghoul eating human flesh. The ghoul offers Kaneki the flesh after realizing that he's hungry. Though Kaneki is drooling from the aroma, he refuses to eat it. A man called Nishio then appears out of nowhere and knocks the ghoul down. He angrily declares that they're both on his property. He then attacks Kaneki, but another ghoul, called Tuka, appears and saves Kaneki. She tells the man that the grounds are the property of Anteiku, a ghouls group, and scares him away. She then takes a bite out of a human arm and offers it to Kaneki. Kaneki stares at her, horrified, and refuses to eat it. At the CCG, the investigators have managed to trace the fiber. They then decide to go to the shops where they're sold to gather more information. Kaneki later approaches Tuka and begs her to feed him. Tuka pieces together that he was human first and rudely refuses to help him. An old man called Yoshimura then walks out of the cafe and tells Tuka that it is Anteiku policy to help other ghouls in need. The man then takes Kaneki inside and gives him coffee, which he surprisingly loves. Yoshimura tells him that coffee helps ghouls quell their hunger, but he'll soon need something to eat. He then offers him a packet containing human flesh, but Kaneki refuses it. Seeing his resistance, Yoshimura tells him that the agony of a ghoul's hunger is incomparable to humans. Unable to fight his hunger later, Kaneki decides to eat the meat. However, Hyde appears at his door just then and leaves him a note, asking a favor in university. After his human friend's visit, Kaneki realizes what he was about to do and throws the meat in the trash. Eamon appears at the shop which the fiber was bought from and asks the owner to bring him the CCTV footage. Kaneki goes to school the next day, wearing an eye patch over his ghoulish eye. Hyde tells Kaneki that he needs help with some work he's doing under a senior. He then takes him to meet the senior, who, to Kaneki's astonishment, is Nishio. Nishio acts natural for a while, but after a brief conversation, he knocks Hyde out by banging his head on a bench. When Kaneki tries to stop Nishio from eating Hyde, Nishio beats him up. He then again nears Hyde to kill him. Seeing his friend in Nishio's grasp infuriates Kaneki and his Kagoon emerge from his back. Enraged, he beats Nishio up to the point where Nishio starts apologizing and begs him to let him go. Kaneki releases him and holds Hyde in his arms. However, his hunger blinds him and he starts licking up Hyde's blood. Tuka and Yomo arrive at the spot and their eyes turn ghoulish as the scene abruptly switches. In the next scene, we're shown Kaneki waking up at the Anteiku Cafe. Yoshimura tells him that Hyde is alive and is getting treated at a hospital. He then tells him to start working at Anteiku so that he can learn more about the ghouls' world. The CCG investigators learn through the store footage that the dresses were bought by 5 women wearing a ring. One of the women bought a much smaller dress. They thus realize, if she turns out to be the ghoul, they will have to hunt down her ghoul child as well. While working at Anteiku, Kaneki meets Ryoko and Hinami, the wife and child of the recently killed ghoul Fueguchi. Kaneki notices that Hinami also reads the books of his favorite author, but when he points it out, the timid Hinami goes away. Ryoko explains that her daughter is very shy and does not socialize much. After they leave, Kaneki remarks that he can't believe they're ghouls. The ghoul working with him tells him that it's hard to believe, but each and every person in the cafe is actually a ghoul. These are the same people Kaneki had so confidently declared humans while sitting with Hyde in the beginning. Yomo later takes Kaneki to a secluded place where people come to commit suicide. He grabs the body of a suicide victim from the grass as he explains that most ghouls, like the Fueguchis, are too innocent and refuse to kill. Thus to live, they feed on the newly deceased. One of Toka's human friends, Yoriko, brings her a delicacy that she especially made for her. Tuka eats the food with Yoriko happily, repeatedly praising her for her extraordinary cooking skills. Kaneki thinks this might be another food item the ghouls are able to eat and asks Tuka if he can have some, but Tuka rudely refuses to give him any. Later, Kaneki listens at the door as Tuka struggles in the bathroom to resist throwing up the food presented to her with so much love. Later that day, Yoshimura tells Ryoko and Hinami that ghoul investigators are trying to hunt them down. He tells them not to leave the Anteiku Cafe until they can find them a new home. Kaneki asks if there's anything he can do to help Ryoko and Hinami, since he knows they are peaceful ghouls who do not kill for food. Seeing his eagerness, Tuka takes him to Yuta, a mask maker, to get him a custom mask he can wear to hide his identity while facing the ghoul investigators. The ghoul investigators learn through CCTV footage that the day Fueguchi was killed in Ward 20, Ryoko was nearby. After Fueguchi's extermination, Ryoko was not seen for a month. They further zoom into her photo and find the exact same ring worn by her husband. This confirms their suspicions that Ryoko is indeed a ghoul. Later that night, Hinami approaches Kaneki and asks him to read one of their favorite author's books to her. Kaneki reads to her and they both end up becoming friends. Before heading to bed, Hinami requests Kaneki to take her to her father's grave, saying she needs to visit him before she leaves for her new house. Kaneki tells her that the ghoul hunters are after her, thus she cannot leave the cafe. Hinami says that she just wants to put her dad's favorite coffee beans on his grave. Kaneki tells her that he will go in her stead and place the beans on the grave. The next day, Kaneki goes and places the beans on Fueguchi's grave. However, he is seen during the act by one of the ghoul investigators. They dig up the spot to see what's underneath and find Fueguchi's belongings, which his family had buried in his grave since the body was never found. They thus realize that the wife and daughter are still in town and prepare for the hunt. The next day, Yoshimura tells Ryoko and Hinami to go to Ward 24, a safe place for the ghouls, where CCG investigators can't reach them. However, while they're both on their way to Ward 24, the investigators corner them. Ryoko begs them not to hurt Hinami, saying she has never killed anyone in her life, but Suzuya refuses to listen to her. Ryoko then tells Hinami to run and gets in attack mode, showing her Kagoon. As a downpour begins, Yoshimura sends Kaneki to give umbrellas to Ryoko and Hinami. On his way, Kaneki is met by a crying Hinami who tells him that her mother is in danger. They both go back to the place where the investigators cornered Ryoko and watch secretly as a severely injured and blood-spattered Ryoko is killed by a Quinque made from her own husband's Kagoon. Kaneki holds the wailing Hinami back and brings her back to the cafe. Tuka is infuriated after hearing about Ryoko's death and asks Yoshimura to keep Hinami at the cafe, saying she'll protect her. Yomo tries to stop her, saying she cannot take the investigators on her own, but Yoshimura tells him to let her go. While Eamon and another investigator are walking out of a restaurant, a masked Tuka attacks them. She kills Kusaba and badly injures Eamon. Suzuya, however, arrives just on time and prevents her from killing Eamon by attacking her with one of the quinks. After several cuts and bruises, Tuka realizes that she's been overpowered and escapes. Kaneki finds Tuka injured in the cafe. He realizes what she's done and hastily approaches her, but she coldly tells him to leave. Kaneki tells her she needs treatment, but Tuka again tells him that if he wants to help, he should go ahead and kill the investigators. Ghouls who murder deserve to die, she says, but the slaughter of innocent ones like Ryoko shall not be forgiven. Later, Kaneki goes to Tuka while she's training and asks her to teach him how to fight, saying he wants to help. Tuka beats him up and tells him she will teach him. For several days after that, Kaneki trains with Tuka. During this time, Yuta also finishes up Kaneki's ghoul mask and gives it to him. One day, Hinami is lured out of the cafe by the investigators using Ryoko's scent. Kaneki and Tuka find her missing and follow the scent as well. Hinami follows the scent and reaches the place her mother was killed to find her arm there, wrapped up in a cloth. She realizes that it was a trap when a moment later, Suzuya appears beside her. Suzuya tells Eamon he's caught the child and asks him to come. Hinami runs for her life, hugging her mother's arm as Suzuya calmly follows her, holding 2 suitcases of quinks. Just as Hinami reaches a dead end near a lake, Tuka arrives at the spot. As Eamon is driving to the place, Kaneki charges at his car and jumps at it, trashing it during the act. Eamon gets out of the crashed car and pulls open his quinque. We're then taken to the lake, where Tuka and Suzuka have started fighting. We're simultaneously shown the fight between Kaneki and Eamon. During the fight, Suzuya pulls out a quinque made from Ryoko's Kagoon. Hinami breaks down after seeing this and starts wailing. Kaneki unzips his mask and bites Eamon in the shoulder, making him cry out in pain. Having the first bite of human flesh fills Kaneki with great energy and he starts viciously attacking him, easily overpowering him. Tuka is bashed around by Suzuya using Ryoko's Kagoon. Once Toka's down on the floor, drained of energy, Suzuya asks her how they live a life based on murders and sin. On the verge of tears, Tuka tells him that they cannot change how they were born. Humans are their only food and they just want to live. Suzuya tells her they're sinners by simply wishing to live and attacks her again. Just as Suzuya is about to finish Tuka off, Hinami cuts off his arm using her Kagoon. Tuka tells her to finish him off, but Hinami refuses, saying she cannot take a life. Tuka reminds her that he's the man who killed her parents, but Hinami refuses again, saying killing him won't bring her parents back. Tuka then weakly moves forward and finishes Suzuya off. Kaneki pins Eamon on the car, piercing through his hands with his Kagoon. He then excitedly looks at the blood pouring from his body, ready to ravish his prey. Suddenly, his reflection in the water catches his eye. He realizes what he's doing and starts wailing, begging him not to make him a killer. He slaps his own face using his Kagoon to bring himself back to his senses and lets Eamon go. Kaneki then goes and meets Tuka and Hinami by the lake as Eamon weakly walks to Suzuya's corpse and cries, holding it in his arms. As Kaneki helps Tuka up, Hinami asks if she still deserves to live after what she's done. Kaneki tells her that her mother wanted her to live. Yomo also arrives at the spot, thus the 4 of them return to the cafe. They are all then shown at the cafe where their lives have returned to normal and they're now living happily, and with this, the movie ends. Thank you so much for watching.